Good morning, good afternoon to everybody out there. Uneducated Economist here. Thank you for joining in on today's live stream. Be sure and hit that like button when you come into the live stream. By hitting that like button, more people can join in to the chat, and it's always more fun when we have people joining in on the chat. So today we're going to be talking about the three most vital commodities known to man sitting at 50% of their all-time high. Now, this is something that is very difficult to explain when most people are looking at money printing causing inflation. They really don't have any kind of real excuse to why the three most vital commodities known to man seem to be sitting at either 50% or fairly close to 50% of their all-time high. I mean, like, if everything has gone up, how come it hasn't happened in these particular products or these particular commodities? Now, it's easy to explain in the manipulation faction, like factor. In that fashion, yes, you can totally explain why it is that silver prices have been manipulated down. There is like 100, 150, 200 paper ounces of silver for every physical ounce of silver. And if everybody who had invested into paper silver was to dump the paper silver and buy the physical, they would simply wipe out the entire world supply in a matter of minutes. I really do feel that. However, that's not what's happening. People are selling paper silver contracts out there, and plenty of investors are willing to buy them, and therefore it drives down the commodity price of the physical silver. Again, you can look at that as manipulation. You can consider it market conditions. However you look at it, be thankful that it's as cheap as it is and you have the opportunity to buy it at that price. Same thing with oil. I mean, oil is a world production. There's plenty of places out there who can contribute to the oil supply, who can be buying oil. There is a lot that goes into the oil production, especially on a global scale. The United States is a major exporter of oil, believe it or not. China is a major buyer, and they are backing out intensely from their economy slowing down. So it makes sense if the demand for oil is down, then you would see the commodity price coming down as well. But it's like, I saw it down at one point at like $66 a barrel or something. I mean, considering it was $150 a barrel back in like 2005 or something like that. I mean, it's like not even close to its all-time high. And in fact, it's like depressing to see how low it really is. Now, it's encouraging on the idea that you'll be able to get fuel and energy cheaper, but it's very depressing on the sense that if there is low demand for oil or energy, then generally that's a bad economic sign. People are not participating in the economy as much, needing that energy coming from the oil industry. And then the same thing with lumber. Now, I have been tracking the lumber industry for like years. I mean, I've been working retail lumber pretty much my entire life. I started this YouTube channel in 2017 and found that people were really enjoying my lumber analysis, talking about building supplies going into the building industry. And so I have covered the lumber industry intensely over the last few years. And it was no surprise to me to see lumber go back down to this normal price. This is what we would typically have experienced from the pricing prior to the pandemic. I mean, I think I looked at the lumber futures, which is going to close here at the end of the week, and I think we're at like 480 per thousand. This is like very, very typical price of what we had experienced back in 2016, 17, 18. Very normal for pricing from back then. But when you think about the inflationary scenario, like the weakening dollar, okay, well, let's take this into consideration for just a minute, because it's not the value of the commodity, it's the price of the dollar or the value of the dollar that has diminished. Well, if that's the case, then what happened with these three most vital commodities known to man? It failed to jive with the idea that it was a devaluing dollar, right? I mean, if it was a devaluing dollar, then everything should have dropped, or everything should have gone up, including these three commodities. Or if there was a deflationary scenario that was occurring in the dollar, like basically the dollar strengthening, then we would have seen it in other items as well, not just in these three commodities or the other commodities that have also come down. It's not just these three. There's a lot of other commodities out there that have also come down. I just picked out these three because they're, again, the most vital commodities that I can think of known to man. Without these three products, they're like, our life would simply not exist the way it does. A lot of people could probably say that about other things. I find these to be the three most vital. So again, like, what happened here? How come all of a sudden there's no inflation within these things, right? It's because it didn't really have to do with the money printing. It has to do with supply and demand. It will always have to do with supply and demand. And can you disrupt the prices with increase in money? Absolutely. Absolutely, you can do that. But you have to understand, it's how that money comes into the system. It's not just a matter of printing up money. See, if you could just print up money and cause inflation, then the great financial crisis and the expansion of the balance sheet from $850 billion to over $4.5 trillion would have created an inflationary scenario. They had interest rate policy set at zero for almost a decade. Zero interest rate policy, and money printer go burr and failed to produce the inflationary scenario that the Federal Reserve was looking for. Now, I know a lot of people are going to argue that and say, oh no, man, there's all kinds of places you could have seen the inflation. You just had to look. No problem, right? We could look at the specific assets that went up, like houses and, bonds and stocks and all this other stuff, things that you borrow money to buy. But the daily idea of our standard of living prices moving up did not move in line with what the Federal Reserve was hoping and praying for back during the great financial crisis. They were scared of deflation, and they knew at the end of 2018 that deflation was going to be a major issue for them. Don't believe me? Go and read this speech, Monetary Policy Strategies for a Low Neutral Interest Rate World. He talks all about how deflation is the major problem. In fact, he says that it was the inflation expectation that was persistently too low rather than too high that was interfering with the monetary policy coming from the Federal Reserve. So it's no surprise to me when I see these commodities coming down dramatically in price because of the way that the money comes into the system and the way that money goes flowing into the different products that are out there. So now when we think about it in this fashion, okay, so now we have people who have money, and how are they spending that money? How is it that the things that they are spending that money on is being distributed through the economy? Because if you don't have a very well-established supply chain, then what you are going to end up with is disruptions with inventory. And that is really what drives the prices up. The moment that somebody goes to buy something they want and it's not available, or the timeline is way out there, or the belief that it's going to go up in price starts to take place, people's inflation expectation becomes elevated, and it ends up becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy. And now a lot of times you're going to find that, yes, the money printer going burr is going to destroy the dollar over time. But again, you have to look at that over a very long period of time, because it's not what people think that's causing the prices up, right? It's not the money printer that's doing it. It was the supply chain, right? It was the availability of it. And that's why you see oil and lumber and silver, which is prevalent, right? Even though silver isn't, the paper silver is, right? So therefore, plenty of people are willing to invest into that, which then drives down the prices of it, right? Or having the availability to invest into it, which is then going to drive the prices down. So if you have a supply and demand issue that is creating the prices, then how is it that they plan on dealing with the low prices of these particular commodities? When it comes to silver, it's a byproduct of other mining. It's not like people, there are mines that go out there, with the idea of going for silver, but generally most of the silver that comes to the market is a byproduct of other mining. So if gold mining and lead mining and nickel mining and copper mining are all taking off, then silver is going to be provided to the markets regardless, right, of what the demand is for it, because it's a byproduct of other products, right? It's going to be forced into existence essentially. Lumber, on the other hand, very different. Right now, we see the lumber prices coming down dramatically at $480 per thousand, and mill curtailments are running rampant, right? We just put another tariff on Canadian softwoods. They are complaining about it because this is damaging their industry up there, considering how much softwood imports we get from Canada. 20% of what we consume here in the United States comes from Canada. So if that all of a sudden gets hit and is damaged and the prices are dropping, that's going to hurt them immensely. And again, here we are trying to figure out a way to create a floor under the lumber prices, right? Accusing Canada of dumping cheap lumber into the United States. And then on top of it, what do you have with oil, right? The United States being a major exporter of this product. Like people say, oh, no, the petrodollar is dead and all this other stuff. Okay, do you think the United States exports their oil in anything else other than dollars? I mean, being a major exporter of oil, right, it's going to be dollars that are going to be priced in. And considering that the dollar is so much stronger than what people would ever give it any kind of credit for, considering like the narrative that has been blasted out there over the last couple of years, it's no surprise to me to see a major exported product from the United States being as cheap as it is. So 11 minutes into it, I think that's a good shot into this. I'm trying to keep the information really short because I know a lot of people don't want to sit through a 45-minute video. I feel like I've been in an interview. People don't want to sit through that, so I try to give the information out in the first 10 minutes. But this is a huge one. This is one that I think a lot of people just choose to ignore when they just want to blast the Federal Reserve for destroying the dollar. And I'm thinking, okay, can you explain these? Can you explain why these commodities sit at 50% of their all-time high or fairly close to it? It doesn't make sense. If the money printer go burr, destroys the dollar, then what happened? I mean, let's take the inflationary scenario out of things for just a minute. Let's pretend that there was no inflation that actually happened to the rest of the world out there and bring that back down to the normal price, and then include that bringing down of inflation, include it into lumber and oil and silver. And how much would those things be? I mean, if they experienced inflation just like everything else experienced, but they're sitting at 50% of their all-time highs, what should they normally be sitting at? Like $15 an ounce silver, $200 per thousand lumber, $30 a barrel oil? Like, how cheap should this stuff really be if you take all the inflationary scenario, the devaluing dollar, if we take that out of the idea that the prices have increased on a weakening dollar, and apply that to the current prices of oil, lumber, and silver, we would see that they are going to be incredibly cheap, way cheaper than what anybody would ever anticipate them right now. And that's why I just don't believe that the money printer caused the prices to increase. I believe it was a supply-demand issue and a severing of the supply chain that really caused the prices of everything to go up. And yet, nobody wants to really, see it that way. They really want to see it as a destruction of the dollar, which, I mean, it makes a lot of sense in that idea of it, but it's not. It doesn't make any sense in these, in the commodity section. All right. Let's see here. I used to watch Gregory Mannarino. Can't stand his fear-mongering now, but I found him all of a sudden dropping the Cantillon effect. He never mentioned it before until now. Kind of funny. Well, thank you very much. I mean, who brought you the Cantillon effect the most? Who was so adamant about it? Who was constantly bringing it up, say, hey, let's talk about it. Let's review this. Let's look at this past history. Let's go through this essay, right? Cantillon's essay on economic theory. I pack it around with me. Let's go through this hundreds of year old essay and see if we can find the economic forces that can relate to today. And damn if we didn't find them. Like, we see them almost as clear as day. We have internalized this. So now when things are being stated out there in the economy, we can be like, oh, hey, that's because of the new money coming in that's separating the rich from the poor, causing this huge inequality. And there's really nothing that the government can be able to do about it so long as that new money comes in. We learned this from this essay, right? Chapter 6, 7, and 8, the increase and decrease of money to the state. So profound, right? And so, yeah, it doesn't surprise me that other economists out there who were close, like they could see it, they knew something was up, they knew a lot of them are really understanding of the technical trading and banking systems and all this other stuff, like way more than I could ever imagine myself being. You take somebody like Lynn Alden and it's just mind-blowing how much she knows. It's just it's unreal. right? And same with a lot of these other economists out there. But now I step back because, I'm the uneducated economist, man. I mean, I barely graduated high school. I stutter as I read, I'm not even in the same league as some of these people, but I sat up there on the hill with some of these understandings of the economic forces that are out there, and I looked down upon the economy and I said, hey, these are economic forces are at play right now. I can see them, right? And as I started bringing them up, people are relating to that saying, yeah, you know what, you're right. You are right about it. Like, they would very much like to blame it on politics, but then once it can be explained beyond the political factions, that's it, man. You got it. It's just like, all right. Okay. How does one measure what are the most vital commodities after oil and gold? Ag commodities and base metals are argued to be in the rest of the top 10. Lumber doesn't show up high on the list. Yeah, well, I would very much beg to differ that if you had no lumber operation taking place, you would not even come close to seeing the amount of economic activity that is happening within this nation. You think about it, construction is probably, it is. Construction is the number one manufactured product here in the United States. We don't manufacture anything. Like, our manufacturing, the amount of manufacturing that contributes to the gross domestic product is 25% or something like that. Like, everything is service industry. That's what we do here in the United States. We provide services to each other and we sell imported items to each other. That's like the major thing that we do. Now, if there was anything that we produced, construction, right? Buildings. And when you build buildings, you are having a lot of economic activity. Not only do you have all the labor expense that goes into it, but then you think about everything that goes into the building, not just the building of the structure itself, but then all the stuff like the furniture, and like if you take a house, you got furniture and dishes and towels and all the stuff, right? All the stuff that goes into it. That is also economic activity. So if you have a brand new house that is built, somebody might move their old stuff into it, like, somebody moving from their old house into the new house. Yeah, you might move into it, but a lot of times what you will find is that people want new stuff in their brand new house. They don't want to bring in the old, washer and dryer. They want a brand new washer and dryer. They want newer furniture. They don't want the old torn up couch in their brand new house. They want a brand new couch. Now, new master bedroom set and all the other stuff that goes with it. So all this economic activity is really beyond just that of the construction of the building itself, but then all the stuff that goes into it as well. Well, when you have construction slowing down, or at least the turning over of real estate, people not moving into that new house, well, what's the likelihood that they're just going to go out there and buy a new furniture for their entire house or anything like that? Very low. Like, they might replace a piece of furniture, but they're not going to go out there and just buy a bunch of new stuff. And so without lumber, you're not going to have that kind of activity happening within the United States. And that's just the building part of things. All the crating, all the just odd stuff, signage and shelves, and just, it goes on and on. Like, wood products are an incredibly vital commodity when it comes to human existence. I mean, it's like the very first building material. In fact, it was the very first commodity, I think, probably for man, right? Was a stick, So it's like, wood is absolutely a vital commodity. And then when it comes to silver is in every single electronic products we have, like all the communication, all the transportation, all the stuff. It relies on silver components to it. Without it, none of this stuff would be the way it is. Now, could they find something else to replace silver? Sure, but silver is what's being used. And if you were to make it disappear, we would not be communicating or traveling or doing a lot of the stuff that we do, right? On account that the silver is no longer available to us. And then, it goes into like medical products, and the list goes on and on. And then, of course, oil. Like, without oil, this is funny because I said this the other day and people were like, people don't eat oil. No, that's not true. People used to literally eat oil. Like petroleum jelly, they would eat it. It was gross, right? But yeah, that was a thing, and it's kind of odd to think about, but yeah, it's true. But beyond that, without the oil for the energy, we would not be able to have the agricultural across this country like we do, or across the world even. I mean, it was just like without oil, there would not be the food production that we have, and people would literally starve. Like, oil is a key component to farming. It's like they are hand in hand. So yeah, I absolutely believe these are the three most vital commodities known to man. And is there other vital ones? Absolutely. Like, absolutely. And people could probably give their opinion on why there's something else that would be more vital than the three that I made. This is my opinion on it, and, you know, whatever. I would much rather listen to Simon than the debate tonight. Well, stay curious. How about we do that? Why don't we ignore the debate tonight and we will talk something else instead? Let's do a live stream tonight during the debate. Yeah. All right. I may quadruple the money I made before 2020. God bless the USA. Well, Katie, good for you. Actually, I don't know about necessarily double or triple, but I do pretty good considering what I was doing prior to the pandemic, and then the YouTube channel taking off, and now the post-pandemic. Yeah, so I too, but I'm doing a lot more stuff as well, you know. Probably Buck, but not my finances. All right. What is that, Trucker bod? Hit the like button if you don't care about the debate. There you go. Yeah, go hit the like button if you don't care about the debate. We should have 347 people hitting that like button. All right. I thought we had to judge their hairstyles. Oh, bro, you're right. I forgot about that. Man, we are supposed to judge their... I mean, ultimately, we don't really need to listen. We just need a picture, right, in order to judge the hairstyle. So we can come back and do that after the debate. We'll see, like, you know, before the debate hairstyle, after the debate, like, you know, if they make it through the debate without messing their hair up, you know, then I think that's the person we should vote for. Like, whoever can maintain the best hairstyle throughout the debate. Thank you, P. I forgot. All right, Obama is going to light up his second Cuban cigar while watching the worthless debate. All right, the dollar is fantasy and held together by belief. Words of fear move the fantasy to and fro. The desire for stuff and things keeps it relevant, you know. Yeah, I can kind of agree with that. Like, I mean, I think without any other choice, you know, people don't really want to, like, give up. Like, people are like, oh, the worthless dollar. Like, oh, man, you know, you're right. You should get rid of your dollars and buy silver and crypto. And they'll be like, yeah, no way. And it was just like, why? Because I don't know. I wouldn't touch that stuff. And I was like, but you just said the dollar was worthless, you know? Right? So obviously their fear of not having the dollar is more of fear than losing value in the dollar, right? You're like, oh man, this thing sucks. So I'm like, well, here, give it to me and you can have this. No, no way. I'm going to keep them, even though I hate it. But no, I'm not going to give it up. You know, people should. They should just like, okay, fine. If I'm not into the dollar, then I will get into something else. Besides, the dollar is currency. It's not meant to be held. See, this is another thing. Why I don't like. I've lost the idea of that a dollar should hold value. Like, I don't understand that anymore. It's just like a dollar's not meant to hold value. I mean, we can wish and hope and dream and pray that it would hold value, but it doesn't do it. It hasn't for a very long time. So understanding that it's more about currency and not money, because those are two different things. They can kind of seem similar, but they're not. Money holds value. Currency is just meant to travel from one goods and services to other goods and services, and it's not meant to be held for any kind of real length of time. You will lose, you know, it loses its value over time. So when people get mad about it, saying, oh, the dollar's losing all this value, no, and I'm thinking, well, yeah, I mean, that's kind of the feature of it. It wasn't like, I don't think it's a good feature or a bad feature. It's just the feature of it. And if you understand that that's what it is, then you know that once you have worked and you have earned that currency, that you need to take it over to something else, whether you put it into real estate or stocks or bonds, or hold on to it at least for the idea that I'm going to have it for, you know, a buying opportunity going into the future. All those make sense, but to think, oh man, I held on to this for 20 years and now I can't buy anything with it. It was like, well, duh, you know, yeah. I mean, we could want it to, but it's not going to. It's not going to hold its value, and just know that it's not going to, and then you can relieve yourself of the idea that politicians need to come out and do something to try and prevent the weakening of the dollar or the devaluing of the dollar. I mean, we can hope and want it, but what difference does it make? It's not going to change anything about how this system is conducted. And so understanding it for ourselves in that fashion is just like, okay, so as soon as I earn my money, I need to do something with this besides hold on to it and bitch about politics. All right. Let's cruise down here. All right, down to the bottom. Greater purchasing power, greater efficiencies. Fiat, yeah, fiat currencies. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Like, if you just look at it as currencies and money, right, and then that way it doesn't matter if it's a fiat or not, right? You can just look at it as those two. If you know it's currency, you can just look at it for what it is and say, okay, it doesn't hold value. It's just meant to trade goods and services to other goods and services. Money can do that. Currency can do that. And you know, if you look at money as currency, sure, you can look at silver. Like, I can use a silver coin to trade for goods and services if I'm dealing with somebody who's willing to accept it. Now, most of the time, if I go to somebody who say, hey, man, I want to trade my goods and services for other goods and services, they're not going to accept anything else other than the dollar in that trade. Now, if you talk to them about it and say, hey, man, I got silver, you want to be interested in that? You might get a lucky shot and find that a lot of people might be interested inside of that, especially if you offer them, you know, something that they could consider a deal, you know? And yeah, it's just like, that's the way I view things now. I remember when $2 used to buy a cold beer. Yeah, I remember that. Coors Light 2025. I remember that as well. In fact, the bar that I used to hang out with had tall ones. They had not just a 12-ounce beer, but they had like the 24 ounce beers that they would sell for $2.50, like during the happy hour kind of time. And yeah, I remember that. So like basically you got two 12-ounce beers because it's a 24-ounce can. Right? You got two 12-ounce beers for $1.25. Like, that was killer. You know, that was when I was first started drinking here. And then, of course, now I don't drink, but I see people paying like ungodly amount for beer now, and I'm like, Jesus, man. All right. Simon, were you suggesting that we didn't have much inflation between 2009 and 2019 because it was mostly supply reducing? I'm thinking of this in relation to house prices. Well, here's the thing. If you create a bunch of money and then it sits in the banking system and it doesn't actually get out there and start chasing goods and services, then how can it possibly create the inflation? It's stuck in the banks, right? We need to have it in our hands in order to do the trade, right? In order to start putting it into circulation and get that money velocity moving. So if it sits in the banking system, then it's not going to be chasing those goods and services. If you have to go to the banking system and say, hey, let me borrow that money so I can go buy this house, well, then what's going to happen to the assets in which that you can borrow the money to buy, right? So now the money's flowing directly into those things instead of into the hands of the people who would then go and spend that money. This is one of the reasons why you saw so much money printing taking place back in the great financial crisis, but failed to find the inflationary scenario from it because it just simply never left the banking system. You know, and then when it did, it went into these assets that just kept going up in price. So that's, you know, I mean, that's the simplest way to explain it, at least in my view of it. All right, England has huge cans of beer, and young people drink them a lot. All right. Deplorable. That's the best fallacy I found was his words. Don't drink and drive, though. No. Helicopter money direct to consumer. How did you know I was drinking and driving again? Space Cowboy. A sports concert arena, 24-ounce beers, at least $14, probably more depending on location. A lot of people believe rate cuts will restart inflation. Well, I mean, I think if I mean, okay, that actually could be the case. However, it's not the rate cut itself that's creating the inflation. It's the expectations of the people in the rate cut that then has them behaving in a way that creates the inflationary scenario. Right? Because inflation expectation is a self-fulfilling prophecy. I mean, a lot of people have to realize that the behaviors of the people themselves, when it comes to understanding what is coming into the future, especially when the higher prices are there, start having them behaving in a way that starts exasperating that exact problem. Inflation expectation is a huge portion of the inflation that we experience, right? In fact, um, I think in this speech, Monetary Policy Strategies for a Low Neutral Interest Rate World, he actually addresses that. Hold on one second here. Let me see if I can find it in here. The downward shift, here we go. The downward shift in inflation expectation has a second round effect on real interest rates, the economy, and inflation. When policy is constrained by the effective lower bound, the downward shift in inflation expectation raises the real interest rates. Very important, right? The downward shift in inflation expectation raises the real interest rates, further diminishing the degree of monetary stimulus, making the downturn worse and reducing inflation even more, right? So the downward shift in inflation expectation creates a problem in which that the inflation expectation reduces inflation even more. And that is the problem that the Federal Reserve was facing back in 2018, was an inflation expectation that was persistently too low rather than too high. And again, like, it's not just necessarily the mechanical portion of things where the Fed prints money and hands, and the stimulus checks get out there and people start spending that money. That little scenario will create an inflationary scenario, but it's very short-lived and a flash in the pan so long as the money is being handed out. The moment that the money stops being handed out, then the spending stops. And so therefore, that inflationary pressure that was coming from all the people who were consuming at the same time, injecting that money into the economy at the same time through all these different channels, creating the inflationary scenario, again, right? That doesn't exist if there is no stimulus to be handing out. Again, that was the flash in the pan. So if you had that in combination with the severing of the supply chain, bam, you are going to definitely smash an inflation expectation into the people. Totally worked. Katie, how do you think the world would react if Bitcoin in the world disappeared overnight? How would it react? I think that it would have a very quick disruption that would find equilibrium very quickly, and it would be over. I think Bitcoin disappearing from the economy would have very little to no lasting impact, right? Like, at all. Some people would be hurt by it, but most people probably wouldn't even know that it came or gone. All right. Deplorable, you better believe I'm going to overcharge you, so just expected it. Shitcoin having to towards last gasp. All right, Putz, I'm locked into a 9-month CD at 5.25 APR. A month ago, thought, why not? The supply chain disruption was what caused increases in prices. Why have prices not come back down? But they have. We just talked about 3 different commodities in which the prices have come back down. Right? I mean, in a lot of other commodities. So, like, when you say that they haven't come back down, they have. They have. Now, the particular product that you're looking for, that you want to see come down, well, that may not have happened yet, right? You're like, no, I had this package of this box of this stuff that I wanted to pay for this price at it. How come it's not come down, right? I can't answer that question because that's a supply issue, right? Did they manufacture it? Are they distributing it differently? Or, like, I mean, there's a million things that could be asked into that question. I just looked at the one commodity that I am most focused in on, lumber, right? I do retail sales in lumber. I know the industry really well. I'm in the middle of lumber country. Like there's no corner of this market that I can't see, so I focused in on lumber. And when it was cresting at its all-time high of 1700 per thousand and people were blaming the money printer on it, I said, "No, that's wrong. Do not blame the money printer on this exorbitantly high price. That is not what's causing this." People said, "No, that's the only thing that could cause this." And I said, "It's a supply chain breakdown. What are y'all going to say when the prices come back down to normal?" Bam, here we are. Totally in line with the macroeconomic theories and understandings that I had at the time. Like I didn't miss not a single bit of the lumber industry, not a bit of it. Uh-huh. And so as people are want me to explain how come this particular product that they had their eye on this whole time still hasn't come down, it was just like, I don't know, man. That's a supply thing, man. I mean, I don't know that particular product. I don't know why they didn't produce it. I don't know why they ain't distributing it. But I know that they're doing it with lumber, right? I know that it was going to come back into supply, and I knew once it came back into supply that the prices were going to fall back down to normal. Right? Bam, it happened. Straight up. Like right exactly in line with what I thought was going to happen. So, like, I can't explain how come they didn't produce the other stuff. I can only explain how come lumber prices. And people ask me, well, that doesn't make sense about why plywood is still expensive. Okay, like again, like being in the industry, I also know that they have pulled hundreds of billions of square feet of production off the market back at the end of 2019. I did a video on that. I said if they pulled this much production off the market, then what you were going to find is pressure moving into the other commodities that are out there that are used in place of OSB. So OSB is an oriented strand board. It's a sheathing. So if you can imagine the skeleton of a building, like a house, got all the 2x4s, 2x6s, the skin that goes on the outside before all the doors, window siding and stuff like that, that's the sheathing. OSB is a cheaper version of plywood. Here in the Pacific Northwest, we use a lot of plywood because of the amount of rain that we have here. OSB is a lot more water sensitive than the plywood is. However, OSB is a huge commodity within the building industry, and when all of a sudden you have hundreds of billions of square feet of production that gets yanked from the market, you're going to see the increase in price moving into the plywood and OSB limited availability out there. Now, this didn't have anything to do with manipulation. This was talked about way back in 2019 leading up, right? They were like, man, this is not a productive product here. This is not profiting well. We're going to pull this. We're going to pull these mills. We're going to stop production of it. We're just not profiting at it. And then boom, here we have prices at $30 a sheet, $25, $30 a sheet. And people are like, how come it didn't return to normal? Because they're not producing as much. You know, that's why the supply chain is not as reestablished the way it was. All right, your attitude can be the most powerful thing over any Fed or fiat currency. Absolutely, P. In fact, your attitude is everything. Whatever it is that you are thinking is the view that you have. What, like, you are where you are right now because of the things that you have been thinking about, right? That's it, right? Think and grow rich. All-nighter, it's great to see you here, brother. Stay. I'll actually watch my song sometimes for a few minutes. That's entertaining. Let's cruise down here to the bottom. What time is it? All right, guys, I got 5 more minutes here. All right, Tom, some money markets at 5%, but they can vary widely at different times. P, I try all-nighter hider. Pain and misery won't get you ahead. Most of all, you get wisdom. I see some people here sadly miss that. Yeah. Your attitude is your altitude. Yeah, for sure. I checked out this system a long time ago. I am blessed to be able to do this. Whatever. Okay. All-nighter. Appreciate you, P. Let's cruise back up here. Katie, all over, or you can go money market and stay just as liquid as 5 1/4. Yeah. Alrighty. CD might turn out to be nice as yield is locked. Is supply chain disruption was what caused it? Oh, we already read that one. Alrighty, guys. We done? I think we're done here. Oil price shock soon. Thoughts? Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that if it keeps going down, like if we're at $70 a barrel, I can only assume that it's probably not very profitable for most oil companies to be at this. In fact, I was, because of the oil price dropping as much as it has, and I saw, I've been trying to build up a stock portfolio, and ExxonMobil happens to be one of them. I went ahead and purchased $50 worth of ExxonMobil earlier today. So I just, when I see the price drop and come down pretty significantly to what it had been, I mean, I'd not say significantly, come down, in comparison to where it had been, you buy, right? You buy when it goes on sale. And now I think that the price could probably drop even more, but since I'm dollar cost averaging, throwing $50 at it now, and if it happens to go down even more in the next couple of weeks, I will buy another $50, and if it keeps going down, I will keep buying another $50. Like, I will buy it all the way down and hopefully be down at the bottom and think, okay, wow, this is incredibly good, and then load up even more on it. That takes guts. And most people, when they start seeing an asset price falling or a stock price falling, they get panicked and don't want to buy it. But when you're dollar cost averaging, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter where you're purchasing, as long as you're doing it consistently and loading up on it over time. Hopefully it should work out for you. It did incredibly well for me with Bitcoin. I've been dollar cost averaging into Bitcoin for years, and it is by far the biggest position that I have of just about anything outside of maybe the real estate of my house, the equity in my house. It is by far the biggest position, and I didn't even mean for that to be the case. Like, I didn't intend that at all. I just wanted to load up on some and have it, and so I've been dollar cost averaging into it, and now it's moved up so much that it's literally taken the biggest position out of everything that I have. So yeah, yay, dollar cost averaging, go for it. And once you do it consistently, you don't think about much about whether I should buy this stock at this time or not. It's just like, hey man, it's time. It's just like another purchase this month. All right, guys, I gots to go. It's been great hanging out with you. Deja vu, great to see you. Kind of opens the door for U.S. oil production. I guess it could, yeah. All right, the problem with CDs is when you lock for 1 year and when your year from now rates are super low and prices of stock and everything else are high, what you are going to do with the money when the CD matures. I really like that green chicken. Great interview. Okay. Good point. Yeah, you just need to consider opportunity costs with your money locked up in a CD. Alrighty. I'm out of here, guys. I got to go. I'm going to read one more and then I'm going to bail out. Alright. That is very good way of developing a long-term position in a long-term quality stock. Dave. Right on, Dave. Okay, guys, I would love to sit here and keep hanging out. Let's come back and talk during the debate. We'll ignore the debate unless we want to, judge hairstyles, which we should do probably, get a picture at the beginning of the debate and at the end of the debate, and whoever has the best hairstyle at the end of the debate, that's the one who won. I think that's a great way of going about about following, these two people. All right, Uneducated Economist, you guys let me know.